Hello, everybody. It's Kateri,
Hey, it's Owen.
and welcome to the Soothsayer's Tea feature episode. Today, we'll be discussing ourselves as an introduction, and we're also going to be discussing how to start your own personal tarot practice.
Yeah. The theme of this week's episode is the Fool, as you will have seen on earlier today in our Tarot Talk. From now on, Tarot Talk is going to be coming out on Mondays to give you something nice and short to listen to during the week. And then our feature episode will come out on Fridays, Feature Fridays.
Feature Fridays, and our features are always going to be inspired by the tarot card that we have discussed during Tarot Talk. We're going to be going through the entire deck, and we have lots of opinions, so it should be very interesting. So, I think the best place to start is to really discuss who we are and what we practice. So, Owen, feel free to start.
Yeah. Well, my name's Owen, as you may know. I am an Indigenous Irish folk practitioner. My practice relies very heavily on Catholicism, spicy Catholicism, and I started reading tarot cards like 5 years ago, but card divination in general, I was taught sort of with a deck of playing cards by my grandmother, which is really funny because she hates tarot cards. She thinks they are of the devil, and I strongly agree. I think we are both evil, and so are tarot cards, and we're doing our best to take over the world.
It's true, really. So, my name's Kateri. I am an Indigenous First Nations woman from the east coast of Canada, specifically of the Mi'kmaq Nation. I started professionally reading about 14 years ago, which I would have been 2021. I started doing tarot or started to learn about tarot when I was 18. I'm showing my age here. I'm very clearly telling my age here, but I've been doing this for a hot moment. Um, what really attracted me to tarot was, the edginess of it. You're an edgy teen and you're not supposed to do these things, so you do them. What got me interested initially is the dumbest reason because when you're a teenager, you're often a little bit nerdy, and I was a giant weeb. And I watched lots of anime, I read lots of manga, and one of the series I was obsessed with was Trinity Blood. And bear with me, there is a segue here. um, when you are a weeb and you're obsessed with things, especially anime, you have a tendency to really consume everything surrounding it. And there was actually, I'm not can't quite remember if it was a fan deck or if it was an official piece, but there was an official, or there was a Trinity Blood tarot deck where the characters were the major arcana. And I was like, what the hell is this? I need to know more. And even that instance of the tarot was so striking to me. It kind of really hit me in a place that I'm like, you know what? I really, really like this. And I started to really start looking into it. This is a long time ago now, again, about 16 years. And there wasn't a whole lot of community with tarot back. And I say early internet times. It wasn't that early, but it was early enough. It was MySpace. There wasn't a whole lot of Facebook or anything of the sort, but it was definitely something that was still very mystical. It didn't have the same type of mainstream acceptance that it had today. So I had to find old tarot forums, and there was literally a tarot forum, Aelectic Tarot, and that's where I did a lot of my um, learning and being part of a community. That forum is shut down now, and that's
As it
again.
should be, as should all internet
You know what?
forums.
You know what, Owen? Shut your hole. I will fight you.
Listen, this is why God invented Discord, okay? We live in 2022. There is no need. Are you still using dial up internet? Are you?
No,
Then
but
why do you need your forums?
listen, it was my home. But
Go back
back,
to
I know,
MySpace.
right? Get my top 10 or what the hell it was called. It was definitely it was a bit of a struggle bus back in the day. It wasn't that there was a lack of information, but the information was still very esoteric. It wasn't quite the whole self love, like
It was edgy as is what you're
it
trying to
was it
say.
was really edgy. It was
Yeah.
edgy as for sure. So the thing is that I find that nowadays the acceptance is really interesting, and I really do enjoy it because I'm going into my feelings here, kind of segueing my feelings on tarot. Is that seeing the evolution of tarot in mainstream is a fascinating thing because it went from something that was very much so almost witchcraft. Well, I shouldn't say almost witchcraft, it was witchcraft to a tool of self development, which is funny because I felt like it always has been, but it had this almost mysticism, almost like this dirt on it because of popular culture. And I'm
The
really
grunge
the
of pop culture.
grunge, exactly. And I'm excited about it for I'm excited, I'm not excited for two reasons. I'm very excited because the amount of availability of decks nowadays and how accessible they are, fantastic. I'm a collector at heart. I like Pokemon. I will collect them all. So collecting tarot decks is something that I really enjoy. So having that accessibility is really, really enjoyable to me. And the fact that I can speak about it openly now and people don't immediately look at me like I have six heads. However, I really miss the fact that people used to look at me with six heads because I'm a little bit of a rebel. And I really enjoyed when it was almost taboo. But it's not taboo anymore. And I'm glad that we can have these discussions now and I can actually talk about this and have a podcast and be respected in the pagan community as a long-term reader. I really do love the things that tarot has given to me.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's actually really funny that you should bring that up, the whole like six heads thing and the taboo of it all, because I was on Tinder the other night and I swiped past someone whose bio had tarot reader at like and then a local shop near me whose name I will not say, nor can say because it's in Dutch. But and I like my mind was blown. Like I was so in shock. I was like, "Wait, can I do that? Can I just put that in my bio?"
Yeah, can we discuss this now?
Yeah, it's like, is this something that can happen?
Right. And for me, who's been doing it for so long, I've kind of almost kept it quiet for so long. My clients were always kind of underground. It was kind of hush hush. And now it's such an open thing and it's really positive. For me, I'm a little bit of a punk rocker, so part of me is kind of like the hipster. I'm just like, oh my god, it's popular now. I liked it before it was popular, but here we are. You know what, I'm okay with it. I actually find that it's interesting the amount of people who are interested in it, but the amount of people who frankly kind of fail to develop any type of experience with tarot. I We both moderate quite a few very large pagan servers or Discord
Hmm.
servers, I should mention, and we see that a lot. A lot of people dabble in tarot, but nobody really kind of deep dives into it. Not to the certain extent that I feel like we do because we're nerds.
Yeah, I feel like people don't use it to the full extent of its capabilities. Like there is so much more that you can do at tarot besides like entity communication or like divination and stuff like that. Like, yeah, that's a huge part of it, and it's a very important part of it. But by doing all of these other things and getting all of these different sides of the tarot, you will be able to understand it so much more in every aspect, and that will bring so much more value to your ability to communicate with these entities and the divination that you do for yourself and others.
And honestly, as much as that is such a big thing that lay people use, it really is a tool for self-care, self-development. Like there's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with that. I feel that a lot of my self-development has come from tarot. So honestly, it's a great tool. I liken it to a knife, is that it is so useful for almost anything. You can use a knife to cut, you can use a knife to pry, you
Ah,
can.
yes. Nothing more multifunctional than a
Yeah, it's a Swiss,
knife.
it really is. It's a Swiss Army knife, right? You
I
can
think this
use.
is you're really showing your true colors here today.
Yes, I'm just like knives, stab things. No. It's true though. And that honestly I off often referred to witchcraft in the same way, as that a knife can be used to cut up food and nourish yourself. It can also use to stab. So it just really comes down to really what you're using it for. Really.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that's actually, the more I think about it, it is sort of a better metaphor, but I think Swiss Army knife or multifunctional tool is a little bit better.
Yes,
Um,
it's not as like, vicious as how I say it, but again, like I said,
mhm.
I'm a little punk rock at times.
But listen, if someone figures out how to use tarot cards as like weapons or like throwing cards, I want you to hit me up. I want you to teach me because that would be so cool. Like, imagine using tarot as a method of self-defense.
I mean, it would be hella dope, but on the flip side of the coin, tarot decks are expensive. I'm not throwing them.
Okay, yeah, that's true. That's true. Although I did recently buy a knockoff of the Wild Unknown,
Mhm.
and it's like the size of a normal deck of cards, and shuffling it gives me paper cuts, and I hate it. But it would be, I think it would work as a weapon, you know. I think I'm willing to sacrifice that deck for this.
But what did you learn?
Not to buy decks that look like they're going to be very cheap off Amazon.
Exactly. We are very much so anti knockoffs here because
Yeah.
I have purchased them in the past and they suck a lot of unpleasant things. Don't buy them. Just spend a little extra money, get actual decks.
Support the small creators that make these decks too, because I do have the actual Wild Unknown Tarot. I was getting this second one as like a gift for a friend, and well, I'm not going to be giving it to them now, but I will be buying another full price deck for my friend because it is
Perfect.
quite a nice deck.
Not my favorite, but it is cute. So, with that being said, we know how we got started in tarot. For you, is more of a generational thing. Me, because I am a weeb.
Hmm.
So the question is, what would you suggest to people who are interested in tarot? How would you suggest them to get started?
Honestly, just pick up a deck, and not any deck. Pick up the Rider-Waite Smith deck. We'll get into that in a minute. But like, just pick it up, practice with it. Don't like push yourself too hard. Don't be doing like 12 card spreads on day one, because that is never going to work. You're not going to get what you're looking for. Start small with one card and just be patient with yourself. Understand that this is something that's going to take a lot of time. And also, don't put so much pressure on yourself to memorize all the meanings of all the cards on day one, or even week one, or year one, because it's not realistic. Have realistic expectations for yourself.
Absolutely. I think you and I are on the same boat on that regard, where the Rider Waite Smith is boring and ugly, and it's
Mm-hmm.
also foundational and necessary.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to, especially deep dive. With that being said, there you don't have to get the Rider Waite. You can just get a deck that really speaks to you and have that to be your deck. But if you are intending to purchase multiple decks or to become more of a collector or to be able to read lightning quick, studying the Rider Waite is going to be the number one way to do it. I,
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of a hypocrite in this area because my first deck actually wasn't the Rider-Waite deck, but I have since purchased the Rider-Waite deck, and it has been foundational. Like, it has been so important for me to develop my practice. I don't like it, and I don't use it in my free time, but for study, it is amazing.
yes, and that's the thing. The Rider Waite Smith. I should make it very clear. We do want to specify it's the Rider Waite Smith because Smith
Hmm.
was the artist. We need to put respect on her name. But for me, it was the only deck that was available to me. When I say available, widely available,
Hmm.
I should say, because again, this is the
Because you're
Wild
old,
West.
you
Shut
know.
your hole. Okay, just for anybody listening to this podcast, it's just going to be me and Owen fighting with both our accents battling each other for supremacy in your ear holes. This is
Hmm.
basically how this is going to go.
This is
But
pretty accurate.
very accurate. But the Rider Waite was the only deck that was available to me at bookstores. It was really the only thing. There was a few others, but I didn't know what the hell they were. So the Rider's Waite was the first one. Rider Waite Smith, sorry, that was the first deck that I picked up. I literally just like
I know.
broke my own rule. I know, I know, I know. Listen, but
It's okay. I do it too. I think we should just swap. We should start saying the RWS deck. We've said it enough times now for
yes,
the
that
people to know what we're talking about.
exactly, or the Waitsmith. But
Hmm.
it is one of those decks that the main reason why I recommend it is that if you decide to go any deeper in your practice and pick up any type of book, all of these books are going to reference it. Now, if you don't want to purchase a deck because you don't feel like you're going to use it, these images are old as dust. The deck came out in 1910. They are copyright free at this point. That's why you see a lot of clones of it. You can just print your own copy of your deck. There's nothing wrong with that. And when I say you're printing a copy of the deck, you don't necessarily need to have it in heavy duty stock, like cardstock or anything of the sort. It just has to be available to you so you can just view the parallels there. And I find that having a physical product in your hand is going to go a lot further than just viewing these images online.
Yeah. Do you know what actually helped me quite a lot? I don't have this journal anymore, but I wish I did.
Mhm.
I went and I printed out all of the Rider-Waite Smith deck cards, and I cut them out and I stuck them onto pages of a journal, and I wrote like what my own feelings were, all my own thoughts, all the keywords that I thought were important, and just sort of my own interpretations. And that journal was like my little lifesaver. And I have since lost it in the move that I did,
Oh no.
so it's gone. But do that because it helped me and it's good.
It is
That's my advice.
very good. And that can kind of go into our next kind of, well, what we want to talk about is tools. Of course, get a deck. And again, if you're not attracted to the rider weight, get the rider weight and then a secondary deck that you feel attracted to. I don't necessarily want to say connected to because I feel like that's something that you comes with time. Find something that you're attracted to and then use that as your main deck. We're going to discuss in future episodes going pro, but for the most part, I want to discuss what you can do to learn for yourself. And tarot tools right off the bat, get yourself a journal, get yourself a fancy one, be
Hmm.
bougie, get a
Oh,
nice
absolutely.
get a nice one and use that. You want to study each card. And when it comes to studying, the question I have for you, how do you study?
Me? How do I study?
How do you
Um,
study? How, well, let me, yes, you, the only other person on this podcast.
I know, but I was listening and I was like, that seems like a really great rhetorical question. Then I was like, this isn't a rhetorical question.
No, I'm asking you directly.
Oh my god. Okay, how do I study? Very well, in fact. I do good study all of the time. But
You're studying right
realistically,
now.
yeah, right now as we speak, I've got my journal in front of me. No, but listen, I haven't really done any like I guess study, if that like in since and by study I mean like writing down stuff and studying stuff, etc. since the beginning ish. For like ever since, my study has just been like a daily tarot practice.
Mhm.
I wake up in the morning and I do a one card pull for myself every single day. And that card can be it's I try to kind of mix it up a little bit. I might do a card for the day before and be like, okay, well now spot in this card things that happened yesterday. Or I might do a general theme for the day that's coming. I might ask it a question that I like was thinking in my head as I was falling asleep last night. Just anything really. Ask like you can literally ask your tarot cards almost anything. There's very little things that you won't be able to get some kind of an answer to, I think, in that kind of respect.
And I think that's a really good point that you made there. When it comes to personal tarot compared to professional tarot, no questions are off limits.
Hmm.
When it comes to professional tarot, and again, we're going to save it for a future episode, but there is some moral questions that you don't want to ask. But when it comes to personal tarot, all bets are off. Any questions you want to know, you're going to get the answer to. And that's why I find it so important to make sure that you are solid in your own practice and you can read the cards like a book before you even
Hmm.
consider reading for other people, even for practice. You have to be able to read for yourself first before anything like that.
And as well as that, that sort of like asking all of these questions for yourself will sort of help you develop your own boundaries for when you want to do reading for other people and like develop your own code of ethics and morals for when, if not when, if you decide to do it professionally.
Yes, exactly. I love that you said if, because the reality is I would think that less than 10% of people who read tarot should be reading other people, and even less than
Hmm.
that should be professional. And honestly, and that is a hot take, because I know a lot of people, the second they see that there's dollar signs involved, that they should be, that why are we gatekeeping this? It's not so much that
Yeah.
we're gatekeeping this, is that anybody can play the guitar doesn't mean that they're anywhere near good at it. I'm sure you've heard Wonderwall played at the bar
Oh.
100 million times, 100 different terrible ways. And
I'm
just
glad that this
because
is an international experience.
because just because somebody can receive money for something doesn't mean that they're actually good at it. And
And
this is,
also, just to clarify, this is not to say that you're bad at tarot if you're not a professional reader. I just want to throw that in there real quick. That is absolutely not what we're saying.
yes,
It's just it's not for everyone, and it's also can be very like I think people don't talk about this, and I don't think we should talk about this in this episode.
no.
but but professional reading and reading for other people can be extremely draining and extremely exhausting, and you don't want something that you love like tarot to turn into this chore that you have to do for money,
Oh,
unless
absolutely.
that's something that you want to do.
Absolutely. Like, and that comes into, I think it's important that we discuss this, just because I don't want anybody to start developing their personal practice with the intention to go pro. That should not be the case. And again, I like using the analogy when it comes to music. If you are like 35 years of age and you're like, you know what, I'm going to pick up guitar because I'm going to become a pop punk rock star in a year, you would be
Hmm.
laughed probably out of every room that you come across, because they're like, okay, so you're just picking up this instrument now and you're going to be signed to a record label next year. Are you kidding me? I'm
Yeah,
not
that's
saying
it's
it
a
can't
pretty good
happen.
analogy.
I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm saying let's be realistic here. Let's be
I
realistic.
think this brings us also into how the fool can also sometimes be a midlife crisis.
You're not wrong. So, with that, all that being said, of us basically smashing our fists on the table, I do want
Hmm.
to really discuss again, tools that we'd use. And honestly, a deck of cards and a journal is all you need. Those are the two physical things that you need. Now, I like personally writing things out, even though I'm really lazy about it. But there's nothing wrong with using like online journals or even an online deck. If you don't have a capability to get a physical deck, there is tools out there. One of them is the app Labyrinthos, or the website Labyrinthos, where you can
Hmm.
actually do digital polls. And honestly, they work.
Yeah, no, they definitely do. I actually also have a little digital recommendation. I don't think these ones are free, but the Fool's Dog app company, they
Mhm.
develop tarot card apps, and they have like they're I think they're about €5 for the app, but in that you get the full tarot deck, the book. The listen, I'm not gonna lie, the UI isn't great. It's giving made on, it's giving Tumblr blog, but it's good. Okay, you get the full book. You get to do like a daily pull if you want. You can like adjust the reading table. That's not really important, but it gives you access to all of the cards all the time. Even for people who have a physical deck, I recommend getting like an online deck of some sort because what if you're on the go and you have a burning question?
Yes, and again, I am a really big fan of Labyrinthos for the learning tools. They actually give you quizzes. You could do quizzes where they give you some keywords and you choose the card that matches that keywords, and it tells you if you're right or wrong. It's a really good exercise. It's literally like flashcards. And honestly, it's really quick and easy to be able to just do not even a minute of training per day, and that's going to help you. Not only that, you can pull digital cards, you can make notes for yourself, you can save your spreads. I would think between the tarot journal, a deck, and then a digital app, that's only the really three things that you need. Of course, tool wise, you would want to also get a dedicated book that is really gives you some really in-depth information. We're going to discuss our tarot book recommendations in a future episode, but for the most part, you can do some googling, find some really good books out there to be able to kind of bolster your learning experience, because the little white book that comes with the tarot decks, they're not great. They're really not great.
Listen, okay, they aren't, but I won't lie. I found some really, really good ones. Like, really good ones.
Oh, I'm not saying that. Like, as a rule of thumb, there's always exceptions to the rule,
Yeah,
but for the
listen, as a
most,
rule of thumb, they're kind of. But
yeah,
other than that, they're pretty okay.
exactly, right?
Hmm.
So perfect. Um, so that's some tools that we have. Now, method wise, I think we both have very different methods when it comes to learning about tarot and how we can kind of help bolster the heart of the card.
Hmm.
So, what's your favorite method?
For like learning, well, okay, listen. I have what my like psychologist has apparently called astounding amount of ADHD.
Astounding.
Um,
You're
yeah,
astounding, Owen.
this woman, English is her second language, and she sat there for a minute to think of the word, and she said astounding. Um, so for me, a lot of the traditional methods of learning and sort of studying and all that sort of stuff, it doesn't really work. My brain does not. First of all, it doesn't do it. If I have to, like, if I it this is not a good, by the way. This is not a good thing and not a good trait to have. But like if I have work that I have to do and it's in a very sort of traditional studious environment, it's not going to get done. No matter what you do or give to me, it's not happening. I'm sorry. And that transfers over to tarot. That transfers over to stuff I like. So for me, a lot of what has helped is again just practicing all of the time. For me, for other people, I do professional readings, but I also give out like free readings to people, just like because I'm like, well, I can use the practice. For learning, it's really like there are books that I really really like, and like I read a lot, okay, but I can't read anything if I have to. And like
I
no,
hear
but like
you.
yeah,
I hear you.
seriously, I read over like 100 fiction books one year. Um and I don't think I've like read a single academic book since, and I'm in college, so that says a lot about how that's going. There are, I guess, you just gotta find what works for you. Like no matter what it is, as long as you're sort of retaining this information and diving deep into the cards in whatever way works for you, do it. Like I think my favorite method, now that I've thought of a specific example, would be associating the cards with people in my life or people on television.
Yes.
Yeah, because the people on TV, I know them like better than my own family. I really do. I watch so much
If
Netflix.
it's like in my situation, I like them better than my own family. So I hear you.
Yeah, listen, yeah. Um and like okay, well we'll take the Fool as this week's example because the Fool.
Yes.
Um That's every main character of every TV show. Meredith Grey, Jess from New Girl, all of them. They're great, and they're all the Fool, every single one of them. And that's how I like to embody it. Embody it? No. That's the method I use to
To
retain
embody
the
the cards.
information.
Yes.
Yes. There
And
we
uh,
go.
honestly, I have a very similar. I have two methods that I use to kind of anchor the cards into my subconscious. Um, that right there is to find parallels in pop culture. And we discussed that a little bit. We discussed that during Tarot Talk, where we do have our pop culture parallels that we really enjoy. But the reason why that's important is that the tarot is a story, right? It is, every card is an archetype, whether it be an archetype of a character, a personality, or a situation. So when it comes to the major arcana, those are going to be characters. Those are going to be archetypes. So we do see it a lot when it comes to, again, like the Hermit card. That's going to be Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's going to be Gandalf. That's going to be characters that are hermits, right? So we can see those character archetypes, right? While the court cards are the personalities, right? So we have the personality cards, which are, honestly, when you see your friends and you're like, oh my God, they're such a Libra, maybe people should be thinking, like, oh my God, they're such a queen of a heart, like Queen of Cups. I think we need to start anchoring personalities into court cards. Now, when it comes to the minors, The minors, on the other hand, those are actions. Those are story beats. So when we see, for example, Ariel having her voice taken in The Little Mermaid, what minor arcana card is that scene? It's going to be the Seven of Swords when her voice is stolen, right? So when I'm watching, if I'm making it a point, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to find the tarot in this episode or in this movie or whatever I'm watching, you can find parallels within that story to almost every tarot card, and you can see exactly how they land.
Yeah, I think that's a much more solid method than mine, which is just sort of like wing it and see what happens.
Well, you're
Um,
still kind of winging it, but you're making it a point, right?
yeah.
And another way that I do it is that I treat every card like a scene. So I am a notorious daydreamer. I, especially going to bed, you go to La La Land to be able to go to sleep, right? You're pretending you're a cowboy or whatever the hell that you plan to do. We all do it, right? So instead,
Do we? Do
do
we
we?
all do this? Do
Do
we all
we?
pretend to be cowboys before we're going to sleep?
We better, otherwise I'm the weirdo here. Not really, but at that point, what you want to do is find the deck that you connect with, or RWS if you're gonna be doing this seriously, and step into the card. Literally find the scene of the card and put yourself into the card. When you're looking at the Fool, we're going to discuss the Fool here just because it is the namesake of this episode. Step on the cliff with him. Look at him, being like, wow, you're a dumbass. And see what his personality is like. See the little dog, see the rose in his hand. Walk into the deck and feel out those keywords. Take those keywords and find it in that scene. Walk into that scene and be there. Embody it. And that comes into almost like meditation. You really want to put yourself in there. And depending on your practice, if you do any type of astral work, you can just walk right into it like a physical realm. But you don't have to go that far. You can just imagine. You can just sit there and imagine being yourself with those characters, in those actions, in those situations. And again, walk in there. The third method I have is that when you're doing your tarot journaling, is to write a short story surrounding the keywords of the card. Find a way to embody that story, because comparing it to fictional characters where the story is already created or in stories, make your own. And that's going to really help you be very creative when it comes to your interpretations.
Yeah, I think that's some really good advice. I wish I had that advice when I was starting out and making all the many mistakes that a beginner tarot reader makes, asking all of the wrong questions. Um, which actually I would like to speak on. What is your favorite way, or like, how do you phrase your questions for tarot? Because I believe that there is a better way to ask a question.
It's an interesting question because I never really thought about it much. I think it just really depends on what it is. I don't ask yes or no questions. I usually say, "This is my concern. What do I need to know?"
Hmm.
And it tells me.
Yeah, I think I kind of do the same. I kind of center myself in the question. If it's like about me, I don't really ask questions about what other people are doing, if that makes sense, that I'm not
Mhm.
involved in. I feel like that's kind of invasive in some ways. Um, and so I try to I try to use language that's not ambiguous either, actually. I'd like to bring that up. I think general readings can be great, or just readings with a theme. Love them. But if you want a specific question, be specific. Don't beat around the bush, and don't ask questions that have like so like weird vagueness to them. Like, let me think of an example. Instead of asking, if you have someone in mind, um, where oh, I just realized that I was about to ask a yes or no question.
Wow, you're bad at tarot. I'm
Yeah,
joking.
I think I might be. Oh my god. Okay, no. Instead of asking like, do I is there a future with a relationship between me and this person? ask what is the future of my relationship with this person, because I'm not it doesn't have to be romantic, and when you ask a question like that, you see all of the possibilities that could come. Like, you may just stay friends, you may hate each other for life, they may sleep with your mother. There's a lot of things that could happen, and you don't get the full scope if you don't ask the right question.
You do have to ask very pointed questions. There
Hmm.
has been times where I've had people just explode at me, and I was just basically like, you know what? I whipped out my
Yeah.
cards, and I'm just like, why is so being such a fucking right now? And honestly, that was it, right?
Hmm.
And to be able to get that insight, I'm like, okay, it's not me, right? It's them, because those are type of questions that you can ask to get very like deep clarification on things, being very pointed on questions. And I think
Hmm.
that's where things can get a little vague, especially when you're starting off your practice, is that if you're getting giving too vague of a question, you're going to get a vague answer. And I see this a lot with people in the pagan circles who are starting working off with deities, is that they have a tendency, like a good example, they're like, okay, what type of god are you? And they'll put it out a card and it'll come up with something like, I don't know, the world. And it's just like, well, what does that even mean? Right? That literally
Yeah.
means everything, right? And
Hmm.
that also means nothing. So you almost do have to be very straightforward on it. And that's coming into, again, almost like kind of nuances on things. I think that really kind of answers the question, especially people who are starting off, is that how do I do this? And what is it used for? Honestly, I think it really comes down to what your personal um, gifts and abilities are. There's certain questions that I would never be able to get answers for, but somebody else can get those answers like nothing. It's just a gift to them because every
Hmm.
reader's different. It really is, right? I feel that I'm quite well experienced in my practice and I can get answers very clearly. But there is some types of things that I sometimes I just don't have an answer for. And it's not that I am incapable of reading, is that,
Well, I
oh, you know what,
mean,
you know what, shut it. No, but it really comes down to, there's just certain things that you may not be good at as a reader, and that's fine. I feel that I am a jack of all trades. I can do everything like sufficiently.
hmm.
But there is certain readers out there, no, honestly, there are certain readers out there that their bread and butter is strictly deity readings. Their bread and butter is strictly career readings, but you give them a love reading, their head's going to explode, right?
Yeah, I agree with this 100%. Like, I have my sort of specialties. There's not much that I won't try to answer, at least. I try to at least be upfront with people. If someone like gives me a question and I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, I do tell them that in advance. But the one thing that sort of always stumped me is deity readings for other people. I don't like giving deity readings to other people. I really don't. Like, I'll do an ancestor reading. I'm okay with that, but deity readings for other people, they stump me. I have no idea where to go.
I can do them. I don't like to because it's exhausting.
Mm,
It's
yeah.
frigging exhausting because, again, I'm going to be very open about my practice. I would have to invoke that deity, and I would have
Yeah.
to basically do the dance of the seven veils to make sure they're happy, that to communicate with me. And honestly, some deities I don't give a about. Like, I just don't want to talk to your deity just because, no tea, no shade. There's nothing wrong with them. I just, they're not my practice, right? I have my deities that I work with. So to bring somebody else in and then do that communication for them, I'll be very frank. I'm like, I'll do it. You're gonna have to pony up. Like, because that's a lot of energy there. And that's one of the
Yeah.
main reasons why I don't offer them, because they're going to be expensive and I want to be accessible to people, right?
Hmm.
And not only that, I find that just because a deity is interested in somebody does not mean that they should be interested back.
Yeah. I also like anxiety for me has been a huge problem a lot of my life, and I'm mostly good now. Like, there's not really that many problems, but interpreting a divine message for someone else, I think I will pass on. Thank you very much. I'm gonna skip that one. Next song, please.
Yes,
um
exactly.
Ancestor readings, I yeah, listen, I love ancestor readings. Everyone in real life who I've met, family, love me. I'm a very good at like impressing people's family, and that extends into my practice very much. So I think one of my friends' grandmothers comes to me now when they have messages for my friend, and it is exhausting, and I need to reset that boundary. But she's also a very sweet little entity, and
Yes.
I feel bad doing it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, especially, and again, we can kind of go into, I don't want to say pro because honestly, it's just about like your personal practice. You do have to make sure that you are setting boundaries, not just with your cards, but what you're doing in general.
Mhm.
When it comes to your deck, how do you prime your deck? Do you like consecrate it, or is it just an extension of your hands? Like, how do you treat your decks?
Well, I how do I treat my decks? It really depends on the deck, and I'm not saying that in a way it's like the deck tells me what to do because it's not really that. It's more about what I use the deck for. So I'm not really I listen. I'm not really a huge fan of like separating all my decks into different like categories and stuff. Different decks are definitely better for different things, but I have three very well-rounded decks, and so they're just kind of jack of all trades in and of themselves. I'll use them for whatever. But saying that, I do have one tarot deck that I use specifically for deity communication, and that sits in my sort of sacred space at all times. It doesn't really leave that area. It get cleansed with eh, it gets cleansed with my altar and all my other tools. In terms of the deck that I do for work, it's why is this such a hard word for me to say?
Do you know how to speak
It gets
English?
cleansed. Listen, okay? I might not. It gets cleansed daily, especially if I have a lot of readings. In between like read sessions, I cleanse that with smoke, sound, and once water. Um I do regret that a little bit. It didn't do serious damage. Listen, I don't really know what I was thinking. I was like
Just don't get in a bath.
I was
It's
just like
clean now. Put some like
I
dish soap
was
on it.
listen, okay, I was in a rush. I was thinking maybe it's like money. Money doesn't get wet.
You could
I
nobody
don't
could see the look on my face, but when you were saying that, I was just like, face crack.
listen, it wasn't the best idea. I didn't dunk it in a bath or anything like that, but I did. I just, I sprinkled some water over it, like holy water.
Okay.
Um and it
Ugh.
was fine. It survived, but it was wet, and then the cards stuck to each other afterwards, and I was like, "This was a horrible, horrible idea." I don't know what was going through my head, but really, any method of cleansing that works for you, you can use that on your tarot deck too.
Yeah.
It's really up to you.
So I'm filthy and I don't clean my decks. I like it when they're stanky.
You're
So,
valid.
so what I do is that when I receive a deck, there's decks that I have on the shelf that I'll be frank, I don't really care for. I don't really. I'm like, yeah, they're the redheaded stepchildren in my group. But no, when it comes down to it, there's just some decks I'm just like, okay, they're cool. I'll put them on the shelf. But when I do really connect to a deck, I learned recently that it is a actually valid form of magic, but I give it breath. So I
Yeah.
make it a point to basically respect it. I put it in a sacred space, I charge it, and I breathe on it. And I basically tell it that it's alive now. And then whatever spirit, but no, on whatever spirit that wants to inhabit it, inhabits it at that point.
Hmm.
So I don't clean them because I don't want to remove that spirit, that anima from the deck.
Hmm.
So there are some decks that I treat like my closest friends. They're comfort to me. So when I read with them, I actually have a fullness in my heart because I really feel for them. I love them like children. There are some decks that I've given life to that are assholes, and I've they stay on the shelf, right?
That happens.
So it's very interesting. And I still don't want to cleanse them just because I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're stuck in there now, and I won't even look at you. It's like a punishment for being a jerk. So it's
I love
interesting.
that.
So there's definitely an interesting phenomenon, because I know that for some people cleansing decks are necessary because an extension of yourself. For me, all my decks are their own sovereign entity.
Yeah. Well, it is actually kind of funny that you said that because I never finished my thought, as I often do. Because what I was gonna say is the deck that I do use only for personal readings, I don't cleanse ever. The only one that really does get cleansed is just the professional one, especially because I do ancestor readings with it and stuff. And the way that I do ancestor readings kind of involves the ancestor entities and spirits having a lot of involvement in the deck, and I just sometimes ancestors are not great, especially when they're not your own. You don't
Yes.
really want them around, and you don't want them to hang around for days afterwards. And so as soon as those readings are done, thank you, here's your water, goodbye, get out of my house, get out of my deck, get out of my life,
And
thank you,
that's
goodbye.
fair, 100% fair.
Hmm.
And I think that I don't do a terrible amount of ancestor readings.
Hmm.
It's just not, it's not that I'm not good at them. I am good at them, but it's just not something in my wheelhouse. But I should offer them, honestly. I probably should. But if that was the case, there would be a deck that I'd call it a bleach deck, something that I could spiritually bleach
Yeah.
between readings, right? But I feel like
Yeah.
at that point, it'd be less of the deck's responsibility. It'd be my responsibility to bring those ancestors in and bring them into the deck. And again, that's a lot of work. So the fact that you do that, honestly, kudos to you, because that sounds like a lot of work, and I'm lazy.
This is why they're kind of expensive. And also, I feel like we'll touch on it slightly now. We kind of just did, but in a future episode, we should definitely talk about tower decks as vessels.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think that honestly, there's so many different ways that you can approach tarot. And the reason why we're mentioning this during the starting your tarot practice is that we're making a point that there's a lot of different ways that you can approach this. Don't let this like scare you. Again, coming
Hmm.
down to it, just going down to the basics, walking through the cards, finding parallels in pop culture, doing a journal. Those are going to be the big three things that are really, 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 really going to help you practice. And one thing
Yeah.
I also want to segue into is things that you shouldn't do, because we do see a lot of misinformation on the we I call them fast food social medias, things that are very, very quick. And we're not going to get too deep into it because that's going to be a future episode of griping about these things. But there are some certain things that we see in social media that might give you a different impression of tarot. And my biggest thing is, do not pull too many cards. Do not. Honestly, when it comes to readings, you don't need more than three in most cases.
Yeah. I agree with that. Listen, I very, very rarely pull more than three cards. Unless I'm doing, like I said, like an ancestor reading, then I've got a specific layout for the cards that I have made for that. Other than that, three is all I really need, especially if it's for myself. You will not catch me pulling more than three cards for myself ever. I am way too lazy for that. I can't pay myself money to do that, and so I will not be doing it. um, Often, listen, like the most I honestly, I probably pull one card more than I pull anything else because I do that daily one card pull.
Yeah.
Um, I just I like the simplicity of it. And when you know the cards well enough, you kind of and also when you've got like pretty good intuition, which I like to boast about having because I like it and it makes my little ego swell. When you've got that sort of intuition and that relationship built up with your cards, you can sort of feel the direction that that card is trying to push you in without the context of other cards behind it.
Yes.
Does that mean you'll always be right? No, but it's nice to have.
If you have to pull clarifier cards to like a if you have to pull it so often, then you're failing not only yourself, but you're failing the cards in front of you. And then your cards are not going to listen to you. And then, meh, meh, meh. But the thing is that if you like, I feel like I can read the entire beginning and emptiness and all fullness from one card. When I say maximum 3 cards, this is just that if you really want to get like a full paragraph of information. When I say paragraph, I'm talking like a thickum one. I usually pull 1 card on a daily. Um, but when it comes to if I want some insight on something, I'll pull 3 cards. The only time that I will pull additional cards is if I really want, again, a full novel of information available to me. The reason why we're bringing this up is because when it comes to social media, which is like TikTok, Instagram, things like that, those reels, those 30, 60-second reels, there's not enough time for the creator to even remotely to talk about anything that's in those cards, right? And it's more impressive visually if they have 18 cards out and they spew off a bunch of bullshit that sounds really impressive, right? So what ends up happening is that they have all these cards out and they say something incredibly vague, right? And I see that a lot when it comes to younger practitioners when they give practice readings is they have all these cards and they keep pulling all these clarifier cards because they think that that's a normal practice. It's
Hmm.
not. It's actually just very, very popular on social media because one, it looks impressive. And two, I find a lot of times when these social media influencers are interpreting the cards, they're not only very vague, but they're not even touching most of the cards. They're only touching like 2 or 3 of them anyway.
Yeah, it's a big problem with, I think, how people are perceiving tarot as well lately. And it's also kind of contributed to the huge rise in grifters, which once again will be an entire future episode.
We
But
can go off.
yeah, because we need the full 60 minutes for that. We really do.
Yeah. And again, I'm seeing it a lot, and that's the one thing is that less is more when it comes to your personal practice. The only time like I will offer large readings, like one of my largest readings is literally for the entire year,
High five, same.
right? It's the entire year. And when I
Hmm.
do, it's a PDF reading that I offer that one. And it's literally a 2 page interpretation. It's 2 pages of like an 8.5 by 11 sheet.
Yeah.
It's 2 pages. And those are 11 cards. And one of them is just a general idea from last year. So it's for all intents and purposes, it's a 10 card spread. And if I can get 2 pages out of it, and I see on TikTok 18 cards and they're like, you're gonna meet like your dream boy next week and you're gonna go to Starbucks. That is what really boils my piss, frankly.
I haven't heard that saying in so long. I forgot.
Such
Oh
a good
my
one.
god. Yes. But
So
yeah,
go ahead.
it's not that it's not that complicated. You don't need to put so much like you don't need that many cards. You don't, especially when you're starting off because look, when I was starting off too, I pulled every card in that deck. I would pull as many cards as I could because I was like, well, more information is always good, right? And I feel like even like a real life example of me being proven wrong is the internet. More information is definitely not always good. That is how misinformation starts to happen, and that's how you misinterpret things. It's like just learn the cards in front of you. Look at the cards in front of you, and if you're not getting a deeper meaning, take a step back, come back in an hour. I do this all the time. If I'm struggling a little bit with a reading, I'll put it down for a second. I'll leave the cards, I'll walk away for a little bit, and I'll come back with a fresh perspective and look at it again. And more mostly that works. Like that's you just be patient with yourself. Again, you really just be patient with yourself. Don't pull every card under the sun. It's not worth it. I promise. I've been there.
The biggest live spread, when I say live spread, like this is if I'm reading face to face to somebody.
Hmm.
And I know that I'm talking about this a lot, like on a professional aspect, but I want our listeners to really consider this as a personal product. Like, so this is what I would do for people. So this is what I'd want to see you do when you read yourself. What I do if there's a large spread is that if it's a decision making spread, if somebody's like, should I do this or should I do this?
Hmm.
I will put 3 cards in a row, right? The center is basically the subject, and then your left side is one decision, and your right side is your second decision. And then
Mhm.
from there, I will surround those with three cards, the two decisions to get more insight. But
Like a Pinterest board.
exactly. But those three on the sides are going to be read in context of, let's just say somebody's saying, like, should I stay at this job or should I leave this job? I'm like, this is
Mhm.
the context if you stay, this is the context you leave.
Yeah,
That's the
that's all
only
you need.
And that's the only time when I'm having like a large spread in that regard is when I'm actually looking at two different types of aspects here. And it's always like the this or that type spreads, those can be a little bigger. But for the most part, even so, I can glean it all from just those three cards in the center, right? When it comes to those
Yeah.
larger spreads, I'm doing that for other people because frankly, I'm getting paid. So
Mhm.
if you're not paying yourself money to do this, just do the three. And I'll tell you the main reason why is because you are actually going to be a better reader with less cards.
The more information you can get out of as few cards as possible, the better reader you will be in the long term. Not only because you can read quickly, but also because you can read easily. Like that, there's no downside to that. There's no downside to learning how to read with less cards. There really isn't.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know a whole lot about rune throwing, which is a heathen practice. But from what I understand, a lot of times they just stick their meaty hands into a bag and pull one rune out, and they're like, "This is my life for today." They just pull one, right?
Yeah.
And I know there's also rune throwing, which I don't know a whole lot about, so I'm not going to comment on it. But I know that the pulling of one rune, like that's a very, very like well established practice, and honestly, a lot of rune readers will only do that. So again, this almost fake news of social media showing all these like the entire deck. Oh my gosh, I can even tell you about somebody at one point saying, I'm doing a 1 year reading and it was 108 card
I
spread.
think I think I know the spread you're talking about. I think I
You
seen that spread on Tumblr.
No, it wasn't on Tumblr, but it was on the Discord servers that we moderate. And
Oh
honestly,
my god.
I went off at that point. I was just like, we're gonna fight right now.
Oh my
And I
god,
had
no,
a moment
please.
because they're like, "Oh, I use multiple decks," and I'm just like, I wanted to smash my face off a brick wall, and I'm like, "What are you doing here? What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" It's like seriously saying, "I need the entirety of War and Peace to be able to get an insight of the year ahead." It
Yeah,
I'm
and
I don't you can't you can probably hear it in my voice right now, but my shoulders are like tense and I'm like immediately angry about it.
I
Relax. Relax. Relax, people. You don't need that many cards.
you don't. I mean, really you don't. You can if you want to. I'm not going to stop you. If you want to whip out that full deck plus extra, go ahead. That is your choice entirely. But please, why are you giving yourself so much work? I am a very lazy person. There is no way that you will ever get me doing a reading with more than 20 cards in it. And I can't even think of it like a scenario right now where I would use the full 20 cards. Because, wow.
Okay, the image that's in my head, the images in my head, you see those people, they're like the one man band where they have like the drums on their feet and they have like
Yeah.
all and they're going through the streets and they're like dancing and they're making all these sounds and they got a harmonica in their mouth and stuff like that. That's what it feels like to me. And they're like, I'm making art. I'm like, you're making something.
Okay. N- okay, hold on. The only I've just thought of a scenario where that would be acceptable, and it really is the only one. And it would be if you were asking each card an individual question for that year. Like if you had 100 questions for that year, and you pulled 100 cards and journaled it into a little journal for the year. Fair enough. But please, for the love of God, do not ask this. Ask one question and pull 108 cards because whoa. If you can read that many cards, good for you.
Well, and
Genuinely, I would give up after like an hour.
honestly, and that case even comes down to is like I'm sure both of us highly recommend doing 365 cards over the year, one per day, compared to
Yeah.
just blasting out 20 for one reading for the year.
I really think, and I think it will make you a better tarot reader in the long run if you do that one card per day instead of doing it all at the start of the year. That is not to say that year ahead readings are bad. I like to do a year ahead reading for myself. It's very simple. I pull 12 cards, one for each month of the year. And then I sort of look, and that card sort of sets the theme for that month, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then every single day I pull a card anyway, because,
Why not?
why not? It's practice. And also, it gives me sort of more insight in what to prepare for the day. Like, if I pull the Ten of Swords, I know I'm going to need to walk out that door with some ibuprofen.
Right?
Like, literally, because that's how it works for me. I will pull a card and I will set my day around that card, because for example, again, the Ten of Swords, I'll know that I'm probably going to have a flare up in my joints. I'm not going to be having fun. I'm going to be sore that day. So I prepare, and it's kind of wishy-washy of me to do that, but I kind of like it. It's my little routine, and I recommend doing it if you want to learn tarot a little bit better.
Yeah. And I think that also comes into, we can kind of segue into what to expect from tarot when we're talking about all this, is that,
Hmm.
again, it's not, you're not going to pull a card and you're not going to be like, okay, at lunch I'm going to receive a burnt piece of chicken. I'm not like, at after lunch I'm going to get like a 97 on the test today. It doesn't work that way. It's not that specific. It's just the vibe. I think that, again, social media and then just regular media has a really bad habit of basically almost misrepresenting divination in general. So
Absolutely.
at the end of it all is that just relax, and again, take your time, use the methods that we taught here, and I think that you're going to really, honestly, everything's just going to work out far better if you just take your time. And like Owen said, be patient. Be patient. You have all the time in the world to do this.
Hmm. We did forget to mention, though, the best method of learning tarot, which is listening to Tarot Talk once a week on Mondays.
Oh my gosh, you're not wrong. It's like
Yeah,
it's perfect.
come on. How else are you going to learn those cards?
Oh, stunning. Beautiful. I think honestly, we've talked for an hour, which
Hmm.
is probably going to be common for us because we don't shut the hell up. But
No, and we babble. Well,
we,
I babble and I ramble, but it's okay. It's fun.
uh, I love it. I love it. I think this we're good to. I think this is it. I think I think I'm
We've
talked
come
out.
to the end of our first episode.
Oh, I'm so excited. I couldn't ask for a better co-host.
Oh, you're making me blush.
Oof.
No, listen, you are very experienced and you're very smart, and you have a very, very funny accent, which I can't wait to make fun of
You know what?
in every episode going forward.
This podcast is canceled, and it's never going to be online. And I'm blocking you from all social media. We're done.
Oh no.
Oh
But yeah,
no.
with that, I think we can finish up.
I think we can. So my name is Kateri. You can follow me currently on Instagram and regretfully Facebook. I don't have Twitter because I think it's Satan. But otherwise, you can visit me on vennoxes.net. That's VENNOXES.net, where I do offer Zoom readings on request, and I do offer PDF readings as well. You can also find me again on Instagram and Facebook at the same username, Vennoxes.
Yeah. And I'm Owen on Kylock. You can find me at my website, Shop a Kylock, on Instagram and Twitter with the same name. I realize that you won't be able to type that into your search bar because it's impossible to spell. And that is why it will be linked in the description on all the platforms. We also have an Instagram for the podcast at the.soothsayers.t, and a Twitter too with the same username. So go check us out over there.
I will not be taking care of the Twitter account. That will be all Owen. I will be taking care of the
Yeah.
Instagram account just for the sake of our own mental health.
Love me some Twitter.
Yeah, you can go into the fight pit. I'm done.
Well, yeah.
I think that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.